Hey team, today I'm sharing a compilation of clips from a portfolio review I had with illustrator Deja Brown. We had a great conversation about the kinds of clients Deja would like to work with and how she could present her portfolio to get closer to that goal. Deja is in a position many of you might find familiar where she wants to launch her illustration business, but it's not quite making enough money yet, so she's taking on graphic design work too. She's building herself a really solid personal brand, and she was really engaged with the suggestions I was making, and I think she's very close to breaking through, but hedging her bets by having graphic design in her illustration portfolio too. So we discussed some ideas around that, and basically I think Deja just has to take that extra step and go all in with illustration and let people know she's an illustrator first and graphic design is just an extra skill in the toolbox. Thanks to Deja for bravely agreeing to let me share this portfolio review publicly. If you're not familiar with her work, give her a follow on Instagram and send her some encouragement. If you like this video, click the subscribe button to see the rest of this portfolio review series over the next couple of months, and I hope you can find something useful in here for your own portfolio. Let's get into it. Hi, hey, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I'm so excited to finally meet you.
What's your goal with illustration? What do you want to do?
I'd love to do it full time, like genuinely full time. So maybe if that's freelancing or having my own creative studio where I primarily focus on illustration, or just have like some super cool freelancing gigs that really just get my work out to various people.
Where are you now in relation to that goal?
Maybe halfway there, a little bit under halfway, because I get cool gigs and like some recognition, but it's not like enough to make a true living just yet.
The personal brand thing, I think you're nailing it. And I think you show a lot of personality in your work. I'm only guessing at your interests based on your work, but it seems like you're putting a lot of yourself into the work. Is that accurate?
I believe it is.
But when I look through some of your illustrations, they're kind of like still life compositions. So you've got some
Mhm.
food, drinks here. There's a lot. You've got some hot sauce, great milk. I'm curious to know, how did you decide on the ideas for these? Were they made for a specific purpose? Did you set yourself a brief, or how are you doing it?
I really like food. I mean, I don't know if that's obvious, but I like food and I
Mhm.
just kind of like those things that everyone kind of gravitates towards. So like, or most of the things that are just nostalgic to me as well, like hot sauce. I put on literally everything. So I just kind of want to illustrate that. Like the Hubba Bubba, everyone goes towards, that's just like something everyone grew up with.
Yeah.
So I really tried to find, or like I create work that kind of just like resonates with a lot of people while still having my creativity to it.
Yeah. I can understand that. And I think that kind of work that's the sort of illustration that does well on Instagram
Hmm.
because people connect with it. But if I put my client's hat on and I think and I come to your Instagram here and I think, okay, I like the style, but what is the message? What is the purpose of this illustration? What do you think these illustrations are doing?
Yeah. I guess yeah, that's a good question. Maybe I think that's something that I still kind of am trying to figure out is what I want my message to be through my work. I would like to like solidify more so like what my message, my outreach would be through my work.
Yeah, and I got some notes here, and one of the things I wrote is define what you want. But to expand on that, really, I think it's important for an illustrator to really think about what they want to communicate with their work, and also to define the kinds of clients that they want to work with. And if you've got issues that are important to you, how you can express those in a way that clients can resonate with and not just a social media following. Now, there was one that stood out to me, Oatly, here. Now, potentially that could be a print ad for Oatly,
Mhm.
right? So it works. It could work as that. However, if you were going to present this to an advertising client, let's say, it might need a bit extra, like a bit of typography, because often ads like this, let's say this is on the, it's on in a train station or on the side of a bus stop, it'll it'll usually have more to say than just having the image there. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I guess my point is presenting your work in a way that clients know how to use it is really important for attracting those clients.
Hmm.
And if advertising is your goal, it's a great goal. Presenting the work as advertisements will, make your portfolio look more like an advertising portfolio. At the moment, it's a still life image of a product. Now, it's not infeasible that Oatly would use something like that because of the kind of brand they are. But I would say Hubba Bubba, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how much advertising they're doing these days. But maybe we could think about your ideal client and how they use illustration, and then think about how you could present your work that would appeal to those kinds of clients.
Hmm.
Maybe you could fire off a few names for me. You mentioned Spotify earlier.
Let me see. I have a full list. Let me see if I can find it. I think that might make this process go a little faster.
Yeah, go for it.
Um, I also had I wanted to do Apple as well. I think that'd be a fun thing to work on. I know my work is so far, it's so different from what Apple normally does, but I love that.
Hmm.
Um, I like to do like a soda, like Sprite maybe,
Yeah.
like maybe something along that line.
Okay. Well, I think
And
that's
then
enough to start with. Um,
okay.
so if we imagine Sprite as an example first, they may use illustration in their advertising and also in their packaging. Adverts will tend to probably show a photograph of the product with an illustrated surrounding. I mean, this is very generally speaking. They'd probably use a photo of the can or the bottle rather than an illustration because they want to make sure it's absolutely recognizable when a person goes to the market and sees it on the shelf. There's no
Mhm.
room for misinterpretation there, right? You could easily imagine a kind of a fruity background. Maybe there are seasonal flavors of Sprite. I'm not sure. Maybe there's a Sprite Zero, something like that. There's going to be a lot of patterns, a lot of shapes, explosions of flavor. That kind of thing is common with soda advertising, right?
Right.
So that could be a good example to add to your portfolio. Well, Apple, the way they use illustration is, very wide ranging. But if you look
Mhm.
at but if you look at the App Store on your phone, you'll see examples of illustration on there. And often, particularly with the App Store, how they're using it is to as like a header illustration for, it's almost like an article, but it's more like a
Mhm.
collection of apps around a specific theme. So those themes might be the best new travel apps or the best new fitness apps. Those illustrations are then taking some element of what those apps do or what those apps can offer a person that uses them and combining them into a visually interesting way. Does that strike a chord with you? Does that seem like something you could do?
Totally. I think, yeah. I think it is something I can do, and I think I've seen examples of that potential because of like LaCroix and Oatly have reached out about those illustrations
Mm.
before. So it's like it's all I feel like I'm almost there with really like defining that kind of stuff, but just like what are those missing elements that I need to add in have been the question.
Yeah, okay. Good. Well, I'm glad we spoke about the Oatly one. Oh,
Mhm.
they're a brand that are, they're more interesting and maybe more adventurous than some.
Mhm.
But really, with the other kinds of work, if there's a client you want to work for, make something and present it in a way where they don't really have to use their imagination to be able to see, hey, we could use that or something like that for
Mhm.
what we want to do. And when I look at your work now, I think, yeah, like you say, it's almost there, but sometimes you got to spell it out. Some of the things you've picked, some of the products you've picked, I mean, I'll just select this one as an example. Hubba Bubba, Franks, Kickerman, are they doing a lot of advertising? I
Mm.
don't know. I don't see much here, at least. Maybe more so in America, or I don't know.
I know Frank's does, but the other two, not as much.
I think illustrating brands that don't do advertising and making, let's say you're going to, based on my suggestion, you might make some new illustrations advertising Sprite. Like Sprite's a good example of one that will use advertising. But if you were
Mhm.
going to pick a brand that doesn't really advertise, it may be a kind of a bit of a waste of effort. So I'm just trying to suggest that you pick brands where advertising is part of their plan.
That's so solid.
I want to talk about your graphic design stuff. At the top of your Behance here, you've got a lot of the graphic design stuff. And further down is the illustration. So, I mean, just the way you've organized it like that, that perhaps says to me that you are a graphic designer first, then illustrator.
Hmm.
And maybe you're making more money from graphic design than you are illustration. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think part of me still has doubts on how realistic I can or how realistic it is to be a full-time illustrator. I know it's possible, but like deep down in my head, like I have those like, is this possible? So a lot of the times I advertise that I'm a graphic designer first and then an illustrator, but then people are like, it seems like you're more an illustrator than a graphic designer.
Yeah, and I really do understand that because it's almost like you're hedging your bets. You're like, I'm not quite making enough money from illustration, so I need to be able to make money here. But I think the problem is it weakens the impact of the illustration. This is actually a good example of an illustration where a client can look at it and imagine how they could use it.
Hmm.
So this image here, I'd have that on your illustration portfolio rather than separating them out to graphic design projects and illustration projects. This is a this is a graphic design project, but it's also an illustration project, and
Hmm.
I really like this style. And in fact, making some more work in this, like different kinds of dishes, maybe dishes from different styles of restaurant around the world or something like that could be an interesting project because there's no end of food related projects for illustrators. It could be an interesting way in for you if you're into that. If you sent this to an illustration client, they see somebody who is just doing whatever they can to get by, and
Hmm.
that may in fact be the truth, but it doesn't suggest professional illustrator. It
Hmm.
suggests you're still finding your feet. Whereas I think the style that you've got and the way you approach your personal branding, very professional. It works, and you're good at it. But then adding the whole graphic design thing in, it kind of just it might make someone think twice about hiring you. Obviously, you want to do your graphic design to make money for now. That's fine. I would suggest splitting it up. Keep them on separate pages,
Hmm.
but definitely add some of the more illustrative elements from your graphic design projects into your illustration portfolio because you've made those for clients. They are practically useful illustrations. They were made for a purpose, which I think some of your work isn't necessarily made for a purpose. It's just made for fun, and some
Hmm.
people will like it, and that's cool. But clients may not necessarily see how they can use it.
I agree with all of that. I'm like everything, it's like a revelation. I'm like, oh yeah, that's so true. And it is true. I have my work and my illustrations separate. Um, And I've started to become a little bit more selective on the design work that I show because at first I was just showing all of my graphic design. But it's like if you have one really solid project and then one bad project, that's gonna like bring down that solid project. So
Yeah.
I've been trying to be a little bit more selective on that part. And then I think yeah, everything you said was really valid.
Yeah, in terms of your brand as an illustrator, keep the graphic design under the radar because it brings your brand, well, it takes your brand in a direction that maybe is not so helpful.
Hmm.
Of all the things we've spoken about, or rather, all the things I've been speaking about, Was there anything that I've said that you think you are going to address, or you think it's going to be useful?
Totally. I think you said a lot of really, really good things that I kind of like knew a little bit, but then you kind of just like brought to the surface. And that's more so like really just refining my illustrations and like what it's like making it almost educational. Like what does this illustration bring to the table that others have not seen? So if it's my hot sauce stuff, maybe like you said, incorporating more typography with that, or finding clients that actually advertise their work is a huge one that I didn't really think about.
Okay.
Hmm.
Anything else?
The graphic design thing, I think I'm kind of in denial about the potential of my illustrations and like having that imposter syndrome that it brings me down and I feel like I have to pursue other avenues. So really just like either refining that, getting rid of it, or merging those two even more.
There's definitely potential in your illustration work. I have no doubt about that, and I really do understand that it takes time to get there, so you got to do whatever you got to do, right? But I think having both on the same page will slow down the growth of your illustration potentially.
I agree.
I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks again to Deja. I can't wait to see her progress over the coming years. See you next time.